Welcome back to the ITAM Kitchen, the place where we have these conversations and we try to cook things up in all sorts of ways. Hold on one second. Change screens, make it happen, because today we're going to do part two. As long as the screen comes back. Sometimes you never know what technology is going to do. I'll try another click. Okay, there we go. Welcome. Today's part two, talking about the AI and ITAM.
That's right.
And sometimes we never know where this topic's going to go, right? Again, this is the whole purpose behind this is the ITAM Kitchen. It's like we're around a kitchen table or around a kitchen island at a party, and we're just chit-chatting, kind of to a degree. But it's about core topics and core needs and make that happen, right? And being able to say, how do we put this forward? My name is Bill Talbot. Mr. Bill, as they know me here in the industry, as far as ITAM. Hardware asset management, software asset management, configuration management. How's it all blend together and have fun? That's the important part, the fun part. You can do everything else, but if you're not having fun, what are we doing, right? Look at that. In this case, we have fun cooking things up. And with AI, we're going to do even more. We're going to do part two and compare. We're going to do a little bit of a review for what we did yet. Seems like yesterday. Oh my gosh, it does. Seems like yesterday. We just had part one on Friday. And then we'll do a little bit of review. Then we're going to dig right in and hit a topic a little bit heavier from a different angle. And from that, I have a couple of guests here. They're kind of some of the regulars we have. We have Deanna and Rob, and I'll let them introduce themselves while I change the screen real quick so we can review last week. So whoever wants to start first, I'll let you guys take it from there.
Go ahead, Deanna.
Okay. Hi, I'm Deanna Hennigar. I've been working with IT for like almost my whole entire life. I started reviewing my resume and going, dang, I've been in IT my whole entire life. So gone from incident management, problem management to change control management. Then I went over to ITSM and spent a few years there. But once I found IT asset management, I never went back. It's just a whole lot of fun. I don't know how else to put that. Rob?
Oh, very good. I'm Rob Collins. I am an IT professional with 30 plus years of experience, starting with the military and the Marines, coming up through government service, private consulting, and now out here exploring the world and looking for opportunities and providing materials and guidance, etc. Much like Deanna, for instance, IT asset management came up quite some time ago, 30 years ago, really, in government service, and it took just a rabbit hole I haven't been able to find my way out of. So here we are.
Yep.
Back to you, Bill.
And keep in mind, when we were doing it, we were only 10 years old. That's it, right? We were 10 years old when we first started this. That's how, so we're not very old at all. We're just getting info started, right? Yeah, we've got a few more gray hairs on that, but some show it better than others. But hey, there we go. We have a lot of fun. So let's review a little bit what we talked about on Friday, just as a little bit of recap to help provide that good foundation framework, because we're on a Monday morning. It's kind of like that Monday morning coffee, right? Let's kick it up. Let's talk about a little bit what we talked to. And then let's kick into it in a whole different perspective. Because AI, we could talk about for days. Because when we're talking about artificial intelligence, is how are we being told about intelligence artificially? Bad pun. Anyways. Okay, so as we look at this, a little bit from our notes from last week is we're talking about some of the meetings, how we look at our summary, how we put this all together, right? And then we start talking about some of our use cases. We talked about the meeting synopsis, what we need to be careful, some of the recordings. That was all in detail. We put that on Friday's session. So definitely put it out there, take a look at it. There's some great material. If you haven't put any of these policies and procedures as far as how you look at meetings, how you record them, whether you should record them or not, asking for permission, let's do it. We've got some great content there on Friday. Then we went into predictive lifecycle management, and this went all by itself. We missed the rest of the hour on that, because for that, when we talked about how we're moving it forward, we talked about how we're consuming data, how we're formatting, how we're pulling this together, right? How we're bringing the screen across and making the machine work, right? There we go. That was an internal joke at me, stab at me. Oh, there we go. That completeness always likes to move. Did you see that? That was pretty cool. How we consume data, how we're formatting it, how we put that together, and also Rob brought up how the completeness plus compliance plus correctness provides confidence. I love that. That's a great little part right there. It's something we should always remember. So we started talking about that, and then we started talking about how we can move the screen and make it really large and nobody can read anything. No, we didn't talk about that. That's what I'm doing in an example right now, actually. But we talked about some of the KPIs.
Yeah.
The KPIs in particular. Here we go. Here we go. Sometimes you never know what the screen is going to do. Lots of different KPIs we can leverage with AI. And the whole idea is how can we automate this? By understanding this information allows us that next step. It allows us to say we can be more strategic in our jobs, right? So we have serial number of incidents. So we have our day job, right? This is things we do that can be automated with our day job. That's what we're talking about. When we're talking about the automation, change of custody, disposal pieces, knowing your status, your assets, right? What you have consistency, you have consistent reports, you do some of the automation, the ETL, part of that. Again, we were getting in the technical weeds a little bit, and then I'm not worried about coding. I'm really kind of understanding some of the foundation. And today, it's about talking about how we're going to apply that. How we're looking from the bigger picture, how we can leverage it. So, because for management to actually support us in this endeavor, because I literally was talking to a practitioner just yesterday. Yes, I do talk to people on Sundays as well, right? And he says, Bill, I need help. I have this role. I'm doing really well in it. In software asset management, we put this in here, and I really love being a practitioner. I've tried the sales thing. It wasn't for me. A great individual. And he says, but the thing is, now they want me to do the CMDB. And I'm not done with already the task at hand, right? I know none of us have ever felt this scenario, ever, right? It never happens to you. It's just this one individual, right? But I thought that was a great little help prop us a little bit more about how we can leverage AI for this type of scenario on a couple different things, right? And we're just going to go free form and just talk about that scenario because I think that's a great opportunity to talk about how we can leverage automation to help our role as well as to help enhance, right? Again, this person had like one employee who was working for him or one team member doing some of the functions, but there was more to be done. It's like, and they want me to implement the CMDB. It's like, okay, so you've got like a 3-person job before you really do your day job. That's how I approached it, right? So let's dig into that because Rob and Deanna, I thought that was a great little intro to actually help us dive into the topic because this is perfect. Where we should use AI and think about what we can be strategically working and what we can't. What do you guys think?
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So let me change a different part of the screen. Okay, I'm just.
While you're doing that, it's an interesting scenario. I know that as a consultant, the first thing I'd want to know if they ask that question is, tell me what your current state tools are, right? And then from there, because one of the guiding principles is start where you are, and work with what you have to kind of like get going, move forward. So depending on the tool, and I guess in some ways regardless, anything that you can do around reporting your current state and your inventory is one of the first things that you can very simply do in most tool sets. Just set that up, make it automated, make it so that you and other stakeholders are emailed automatically at like 6 a.m. So that everything's waiting for you. You don't have to go chase it. You want it to come to you so that you can do those decisions. And then there are other functions that can fall right after that, especially around the incorporating AI into that. If you start with that part of the process, or those processes, I should say, then you're already steps ahead, quite a few.
No, that's a great intro. Deanna, you want to add any more into that?
Well, one of the things, if you starting with your tools, if you're looking to advance your tools, go from one application to another, you can use AI to help you to understand exactly where you stand before you transfer over to your new program. AI will help you to know, one of the things I discussed last week was the ETL, the electronic transfer and load process.
That's right.
You need to have each one of those fields pretty much accurately or your data will not go over. If one field has 25 characters and another field has 50 characters, bringing data over from a 50 character field to a 25 character field. And there's a lot of background work you need before you can actually transfer your products. Will they work? Will your data work in the new environment?
Yeah.
Those are a lot of things. And again, like Rob and Bill said, you have to know your tools first before you can change tools.
Well, it may not be changing tools, and I expanded beyond a little bit what we're talking about. It's the tools, the people, the process. I even throw governance in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you understand the whole program and that part of it, anybody can use a tool, and that tool can be Excel, for example. Right, and maybe you want to go to Excel. And actually, this one actually, they had a very big software asset management product, and they went very simple because the company wasn't going to pay for the expensive stuff anymore. Very commonplace, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just that more and more, right? But it also says, okay, how can I work with this? I know I'm limited, but how do I further grow? Put that next step. But so I extended that a little bit when Rob, you were talking about. So I had the people process and really look at the maturity. And we can talk about maturity models, et cetera. That's a whole slew of confusion that I'd love for us to put a session just talking about maturity at some point, get some clarity on it. But also know your metrics and how accurate your data is.
Yes.
And that, Deanna, that's kind of where I was taking.
Yeah.
That's where I was taking where you were, right? Is when you know this, then you have your foundation, you know your baseline.
Yeah.
Right. And I think from an automation and AI can absolutely help with this, all of this, and measure and provide that dashboard like Rob, what you were talking about. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also the garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a point I'd like to kind of emphasize on that, especially around the tool that your company that you've bought already, right? One of the biggest things I've seen commonplace among customers, among orgs, is they've bought it, they spent a terrific amount of money on it, but they're not fully aware of all of the features, the fields, or the capabilities of that tool. I'd say before you go out and make that kind of an investment, really take time, assign somebody to it, know what you have. I've seen this many times. Some of the bigger mistakes that I've seen is people creating fields because they didn't know that a field already existed for the stuff that they're trying to collect. Garbage in, garbage out. So on this case, right, or in this particular case, know that tool, know those features, know the fields. Otherwise, you're throwing money, good money after bad if you don't fully understand it. And then you can begin looking at how AI can then use that complete and that current data set in order to leverage this intelligence.
Absolutely. I want to capture that because that's a great point, because when you know this, you can put this with an AI and say, here's your baseline. You can actually use the model itself. You can say, here's the baseline of the start from. It also help provide that, say, the plan. You kind of know your bigger picture, irrelevant what the tool is. Because if you know the data, it's after battle. It doesn't matter what the tool is, right? And being able to say, okay, let's put that. Actually, I'll put this 3. I'll put number 3. I'll say established baseline.
Yeah.
And I'll say put with an AI.
Yeah. A lot of companies don't realize that their data are as non-clean as they understand. Because if you keep looking at the same thing over and over and over again, at some point in time, you totally forget what you're going for.
Yeah, you look at it nonstop, and during the day, it looks perfect. You don't know any different, right?
I've done the same thing with desktop publishing, going, I've read everything I can, and I'm only reading what I'm reading now. You need to take a look at it as well. I feel that that's an area that AI could be helpful in.
Yes.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Because when you start putting in AI in here, right, there's also something else we need to put out there. You can also further refine your roadmap.
Yeah.
And from that roadmap, you have those milestones that you're defining. Again, look at the bigger picture. You have somebody who's trying to get the next step, et cetera. How can you leverage AI to help ease that workload? Because management says you're not going to hire anybody right now, right? We have never seen that either. But those milestones to say, here's where you want to go, that's what comes to mind for me is you put the milestones from the roadmap to say, here's your duration, here's what I need for outcomes. Let's be able to measure this on a regular basis and be able to track that so we can report upon it. Again, that's my brain story. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, from the roadmap perspective, really, we're assuming that this is a start point.
Right.
So absolutely. And the other thing too about knowing and understanding your tool is your tool may already have AI as one of its capabilities. So you may not have to move beyond that unless there are trust issues with that particular, let's say, implementation of AI. In which case, yeah, you could step back to something that's known to be a bit cleaner and that doesn't farm results, and then take those off to self-train, or for AI training by the publisher.
And keep in mind why we're saying this is you're starting to have a tracking mechanism, right? You're now having technology help with that reporting. And that's actually where we're headed. We kind of took a little bit to get here, but now you kind of see where AI is helping, assisting us, because it's bringing that resource for you, right? And they might, let's say, Swizzle, how much percentage or what CI types might be you're managing or different categories of assets. You're able to start reporting upon that and give those reports to management. And action officer defines, provides. I'll say reports, right? Sorry, I'm trying not to. It's hard for me to talk and do this at the same time, but I'm figuring out that sequence. But you also start providing those management reports on a regular basis. That can be daily, weekly, ad hoc, et cetera, because you have now a good foundation to come from. You also know the data you're working with, right? So you have that baseline to say, okay, at this point, it's like, management, I hear you want to do a CMDB. I get it. We don't have one. You want to do business services without us having a CMDB today. Yeah, we're going to talk about CMDB. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We got a little bit of work we need to do. Let me get my ducks in a row a little bit here. Give me a week or two first, and let's follow back up. Now, I heard you loud and clear. I realize you want to have it like yesterday for business services. I didn't. The outage kind of hurt last week, right?
Yeah.
But let's work with this and see where it can take us, so I can get this off my plate, at least making progress, and determine how much time I need to put towards this or not, as you put me on a new task, right?
There is still a learning curve learning AI.
Absolutely. But
Yes.
the thing for me that's interesting when we do this, and I'm curious on some experiences that you have, Rob and Deanna, is when you get this, I say you're kind of put in a corner in this scenario, right? Management's kind of saying, okay, you're going to fix it all. Right? And we know it's not, it's a little overwhelming. But being able to say, okay, how do we work through this, right? How do we help identify and say, okay, get that baseline? How do we also identify what still need to be worked on here that we may still need resources to do it? We may not be the resource to oversee it. We might oversee it, but we're not going to be the doer anymore. What experience can you talk about saying, okay, manager, you want me to do this project? That's great. I still need somebody to help me because these additional tasks need to be finished. And here's the value I don't want to lose what we see so far, as far as, say, software asset management as an example. What comes to mind?
Frame it for success. I mean, you've got to be very upfront about that so that they can make a decision, right?
Yep.
In order to make it so that you're going to get some value out of the end, the end state of this, I need the following things to happen. I need support. So if you lay those things out and you set those expectations right up front, I think that's probably one of the first things to do.
And helping many people are still worried that AI is going to take their jobs away, and they may not want to work with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's dealing, I guess, with the stigma of it. I mean, people have to understand that AI is nothing more than a set of tools, a capability, and those that wish to do good will leverage it for that, and those that don't, you know the answer.
Yep.
There's little that you can do to personally control that.
Well, it still goes back to the question though, right?
Mhm.
And I think you talked about AI is a capability,
Yep.
right? It's not a replacement for human effort.
Right. Yep.
And what I mean by that is, okay, so we talked about some of the tedious things on Friday, right? But you
Mhm.
still need someone to actually work with it. In this case, say
Yep.
software asset management is a project that's already underway, right? You still need a human element for that because software asset management, as well as hardware asset management, never stops, right?
Yep.
You still need the human aspect. So how do we work with that? So back to leadership. Say, okay, because this is a leadership discussion, right?
Yes.
They're going to say, okay, well, the product says AI is going to eliminate 90% of what asset management's going to do. False.
Right.
It's going to enhance what it's doing. It's not going to replace
Right.
because you still need that human interaction. So figure out, okay, who again, you're a one person or maybe a 1.5 person kind of effort. How do you talk to leadership and say, here's all AI is going to be able to do. I still need an additional person to deal with this task because you just put me on a whole bigger project.
Yeah.
And I need to keep my wits for myself, right?
Yeah.
My
You
wits.
have to have that. You have to have that risk discussion with them up front. And there are examples now out there. We have examples where AI was leveraged and a major consulting firm needed to refund a considerable amount of their fee. So we'll have that discussion, and if you can back it up with numbers, some tangible figures, that gets I would assume that that's going to get leadership's attention.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
One example I had is if we allowed AI to run through and change, say, our CMDB and fix all the CIs,
Yeah.
the people who are using those CIs may not understand, well, why did you remove this field? Well, we went with AI and they said, you're really not using it. But I rely on that field. And then you go back and you see that they are relying on the field that belongs in the AMDB and they wanted to fix the CMDB because they didn't rely on the AMDB. And that's where a person has to come in to kind of say, I don't like what you did.
Yeah, you get to do that, that analysis and, just good due diligence and change management, for instance. You're going to have a current state and you're going to have a future state that's been defined. You have work that's going to move your system to that future state. So if they've done their jobs properly, they've done all the appropriate backups and established their fallback position and strategy in the event that something doesn't quite turn out right, or worse, the system gets broken and you need to move back to that working state.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's important to that because you can automate as much as possible, right? You can try to say, okay, we're going to try to automate it, make it so scan, it shows up the dock, we're going to barcode it, we're going to make it just like Walmart does for a store, right? Have the pallet show up and it says, okay, here comes 100 TVs, and it scans it, and you don't even have to worry about the employees don't have even a barcode scanner in their hand, right?
Yeah.
It's out there, it comes on a pallet, you know what's coming up, it comes off the truck, it came straight from the warehouse. You can try to automate this as much as possible, but a human interaction is still required.
Yeah.
Right. Validation. Because as much as Walmart, I'll give an example. Walmart's actually a great example here, right? And for those that don't know Walmart, welcome to Walmart, right? I put a little smiley face going around here somewhere for you. Is think about a Walmart store when you walk into it. I don't care whether it's small or big. Products everywhere. Lots of product everywhere, right? But you know what? There's still people in the building. They're still stocking shelves. They're still paying attention to what's happening. They're still helping the returns. They're still processing you at the checkout, right? They're still helping the different departments. May not be as many as it used to be, but the human interaction is still necessary, right? And again, I'm just using Walmart as an example. It could be anywhere, right? Walmart, Target, and those are things that come to mind. Home Depot, here we have in the U.S. as well for home. And everyone has their own consternation about any of these companies. But when you start talking about as much as you try to automate, you still have to have that human interaction. And that's important. And leadership realizes that as well. Because you know what? That's the thing to remember about leadership. Because leadership, they got this CXO title or VP title or something like that. They've gained their rights, which is great. Congrats. I'm glad they've been able to advance. But the reality is when they go home, they're not the CEO of the home place, typically, right? They're another person like just you and I. Mm-hmm. They're there with the family, trying to figure out how to fit in, maybe get a plan for the next trip. Maybe they go on more expensive trips than us. There you go. That's how that works, right? But still, they still need to go to Home Depot. They may still have to go pick up the gallon of milk. They still may have to go get a TV just went out, so they're going to go buy a new one, right? So you go to the different electronic stores. They're just like us. They're just human, just like us. So they understand that. So when we make it relatable, we have that conversation, because that's typically where we lose it, where we misstep, is we realize they say, okay, we can do this. Well, that's great. Bring it back to the terms, right? We can go. But the automation can only be as effective as the process. Mm-hmm. So where I'm going with this is when it comes to AI, right? We have to think about being more strategic. How do we put that in place? How do we go that next step, right? We've hit a lot here. We hit the KPIs. We've hit that piece of it. But when it comes to the human interaction, that's also quite important for us. Because that comes back to the communication, right? Yeah. So what comes to mind, Rob, when I say that? It's what comes back to the communication, the leadership, the dialogue, right? Again, the human interaction. What comes to mind for that? Because as AI changes our world, Deanna, feel free to chime in on this too, because I wasn't trying to chime in Rob. What else do we need to think about? Because our world is totally changing, but it's not that, I don't remember which way you said it, it's not that it's eliminating jobs, it's helping excel and accentuate our jobs. So we have to look at it differently.
Well, one of the approaches, for instance, when you are dealing with this, is focus on the quality assurance, right? This is the stuff that you can plan for and you can do the prevention, right? It's also a strategic view of the use of AI, for instance, and understanding the error rate and the hallucination rate, so that as you do this and as you incorporate these things and move things to the testing platforms, right, prior to production, is you can do this. You can expect these things to fail. And so what you're doing here is you're at least providing some guidelines and some process around that so that you can reduce the error from the output. And then, of course, you've got to also consider your quality control stuff too. Quality control is the reactive and the quality assurance is the proactive, the planned, and the strategic. That's the distinction between the two of them. So I think that that's really important, especially understanding the technology, which is still kind of in its infancy as far as applying in the business world, but those are things to definitely think of.
Do you mind if I give a Star Trek example for this?
Sure.
Okay, Captain Kirk was always good at running the Enterprise. And then Starfleet Academy said, oh no, we have this brand new program. It's going to run your ship. And this ship ends up saying, we don't need these people. And they put them through shoot them off the ship. And then it starts a war with someone. And if you can't come back from taking control with the human, their machine is now running your life. So that's a little bit about quality assurance and control and governance. What can we allow AI to do on its own without, what if it makes a mistake?
Yeah, that's a risk conversation.
No, it's a risk conversation.
It's actually a movie about that, believe it or not. It's not a Trekkie movie, actually. It's actually called Wall-E.
Oh, okay. I don't think I saw that.
So Wall-E, the whole purpose behind Wall-E is
I
thousands of people on this starship, right? Everyone is drinking their cokes, and they're sitting on these kind of lawn chairs and floating all around the spaceship, right? They kind of float around, and they're trying to explore the new Earth, right? Because the Earth, as we know it, we won't get the destructive side, but basically we destroyed our own world. So this huge spaceship, it floated around, and all of a sudden they found life form somewhere. But what happened was everything was so automated, people didn't know where they were. This has been a couple decades, right?
Yeah.
You're in space, you're floating around. Back to your point, automation's there, and people just did status quo. And all of a sudden there was a disruption. Nobody knew what to do, right? The captain he was sleeping. He's been sleeping for decades, basically, right? He just like, oh wow, okay, we need to do something, and the robot had to take over because the robot had this common sense instinct that kind of came over him. It's like, I need to change. I found something and no one's paying attention, right? That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's our world, right? It's like, okay, everyone's used the status quo. That's great, but realize we're about to hit this landmine. It's gonna hurt, right?
It's gonna hurt.
On a couple fronts. So we have to have that human element, right? It's important for us to realize that, and I bring it back literally to, if no one's ever seen Wall-E, go see it. It's out there. Not trying to promote Disney or anything, but it's a Disney movie. That's what we do. That's our true world. That's how we serve others, right? World, and as far as the environment we work in. And when we start figuring out how to communicate and connect with people, that human element, that's where we're bringing it back to reality.
Yeah.
Because again, the issue with asset management, and this is the thing with technology, right? It's not a technology problem. It was never a technology problem. It's a people problem.
Yeah.
And you can never eliminate the people aspect, right? Okay, so as we go through this, what else comes to mind with scenarios like this, right? So we have an individual. He's been asked to start working at C&D. He's trying to figure out different tasks, et cetera. And he's trying to work on the roadmap, things like that, individual. But he has a whole C&D project on top of it. So how can he leverage AI to say, okay, here's the status quo on the team for this part of it, for AI capability, and say, okay, here's where we are with Sam. Realize we can't do more than this because you have me on another task. How can we say, here's where we need another resource to actually work in here and manage this, because I just don't have time. How would you approach that? Because these are topics that typically we don't talk about in the real world, right? It's always usually behind closed door, but we're going live, right? How do we work through that and say, I know as much as you tried to avoid bringing a team member in, if you want me to do this new task, I've got to bring someone in to do some of the lower end tasks to help me with what's already underway.
Yeah, that's a resource conversation.
Yeah.
And what's the value to it? If it's really valuable and it's really important, you got to put somebody on it. And there may even be an argument for us to maybe leveraging AI to act as that, how would you say it, like an agent to perform those tasks. So there's that opportunity too. But when you go to do that though, initially, you've really got to have a good, you got to have a really good oversight and governance on this, and really look at and test the quality of what's coming out of it. Because you're going to end up making major financial decisions for your business. You really want to make sure that you've done all of the due diligence and done the math. And AI can definitely help with some of that.
Well, it's also some of that oversight, right? So I think
Yes.
AI can help you with the oversight, right?
Yeah.
So it's governance and oversight. I'll put these together.
Would AI be able to help us when there are changes within, say, the governance? The United States now says we have to do this. You can no longer use your Excel spreadsheet, or EU saying that your data has got to be more protected. Could it help us change our going forward within our governance, because we can learn quicker what the impacts are than sitting down and reading about them and then trying to apply? So in changing the government, like having a governance agent, not only within our own company, but one that scans the world for governance changes in the world.
Mhm.
And in military, I mean, it goes across the board when everybody's protecting their data and us, things change.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's being able to say, okay, how can we leverage it to actually better help our automation, provide, again, the dashboard oversight. I think it's extremely critical, right? And management expects us to do that, but we still have to have that human element, right?
Yep.
We pull back to that, right? And to your point is the value. I think in the value, we also need to refine what's possible, what's not. Right. And you have to differentiate to say, okay, here's all you guys are going to provide. And they say, well, you need to add to the library. It's like, this is not a library discussion. LLM, right? It's not an LLM discussion as far as that language library, right? Or the model is the language library model is what I'm trying to say. It's more about, okay, how do you work with the anomalies? How do you work with those individuals and make sure you have that alignment in place, right? So how at this point, I guess we go back to the question is like, how do you say, here's where humans need it? You're right, it is a resource discussion, but how do you say, how do you define that, okay, here's the capability level of effort I need for that human interaction that I cannot provide?
Well, you
I think
could,
that's what everybody gets stuck with, Rob.
man,
Because everyone says, okay, we have a resource discussion. Well, that's great. But where's the numbers to that?
mhm. I think it would be good to kind of understand, based on what your expectations are of your outcome, right? What can you isolate what AI cannot do effectively, or what AI ought not to be trusted to do? Yeah, and sort of come at it from that standpoint too, because then, yeah, now you've aligned the activity that you're having from the business to, for instance, IT and IT asset management, and now you can focus then on a list of things like what it can do, what it cannot do, and then you can begin with the cans around putting together processes that you can begin to build, test, and then push into the production environment, and then look at the stuff that you know that it cannot do and try to get some assistance around that, and then that's it. And then you can test that to see whether or not it really cannot do the following function. And then you can say, all right, well, if you can't do this, a person has to do it, or oversight has to be put in place so that we make sure that we're getting good, clean results that we can make decisions off of.
The processes, we've even been taught, like say we go back to Sarbanes-Oxley, is AI allowed to test itself? I mean,
That's a testy conversation.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay. Does a human have to now look to be the second type of eyes on a thing? Because usually you need 2 to 3 people or else you have collusion. Can AI collude with itself?
Mhm. It's like doing self-maturity assessments.
Well, it's just not that, it's more the auditing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's your auditing process, right? And that's about is how do you validate your auditing as you go through this?
It's a good point.
That is a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. That's really good.
I don't have a box. I don't think inside a box. I don't have one.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because when it comes to the audit process, I remember at GE, right? We had these individuals that were auditors, and I found this actually throughout the entire industry as a whole, the entire business community now, is we used to have auditors come in. And the auditors came in not to just look at asset management, they looked at across the business. They want to see how the business was operating, right? because they want to validate and make sure it's working right. And what I'm hearing here, and I hadn't thought about, but it's a really good point, is usually these guys and gals, they're really, really, really good at what they do, like really good, because they understand it all, right? And they have to understand the bigger process. But I will also say they're similar to how we are in asset management. They get kind of put outside the door of the real conversations because people don't realize how valuable they are. Right? And when I say large companies, I'm saying, okay, you got the Home Depots. I just say Home Depots. You got Citigroup. You're going to have. It could be Macy's. It doesn't matter. Coca-Cola, right? They all have these type of auditors. Now, what we have to do is bring these type of activities into our own world. And keep in mind, by default, a lot of people don't realize this. I know, okay, we had earth shattering it ever happened. We don't do this because we're too busy implementing tools. You know what asset management really is? We're auditors.
Yeah.
That's our work.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone said, okay, technology, and gets so stuck up on the tool. It's like that's where the tool part of it is. I get hung up on too, to say, okay, it's not just about a tool. We have to audit what we do. We have to audit our process. We cannot just assume it's going to work. We can't just assume people are going to follow it. We cannot just assume this is the outcome. Because what happens, I won't go there. We'll live on air because I was going to say, what happens when you assume? Yes, just figure out that. You can crack your own pun on that one. We'll stick on that. But by the way, I know we're 45 minutes into this, but if you're on air, please say where you're from, contact us from, and feel free to put any questions in there. But I'm hoping you're also understand the value behind AI, because there's a lot of change happening, and everyone has the fear factor. That's how we all started. That's why we've had thousands of people now that have lost their jobs in asset management, because everyone says, oh, the tool's going to fix it. The reality is it's not. It's going to enhance it. And that's why we're going through some of this exercise. And this is just the beginning, right? We're just kind of brainstorming and making it out the gate to help us get started from the conversation perspective, but also help plant a seed for you. Because if you're not using AI today, you're going to need to, right? And you're looking at that next step. Because here's where else I'm going to go. My brain just went there. Oh, cool. Let's go right here. Because we're at the last 15 minutes. Because we were talking about automation, et cetera, right? When you think about what you're doing today, just pull back to reality. We have data, we have process, we have reports, et cetera. But the reality is we still have our tasks to complete. That doesn't change. As an example, if you're going to compare two different data sources, I'm just going to go kind of crazy, but not too crazy. And so you want to compare data between two different spreadsheets, you can do a VLOOKUP or something like that. Or you can leverage AI to import the data in, columns and all, right? And compare. So let's write down some of those tasks. I can say spreadsheet, I'll say XLS.
Sure, it's different formats. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Data. I'll just think of that. And compare. And when I was doing this historically, I'd throw into like an Access database and compare the two. With all sorts of different results. I mean, you can do an Excel too. Excel now has the functionality. You can do a lot of it in there. But that's what I did. I did a lot of this. But you can actually do this with AI and say, okay, show me the top 10 anomalies you see within the data. It'll spit out like that.
Right.
You compare a data source and say you want 15 different data sources. It spits it out, right? It provides that analysis, right?
Yeah, I used to routinely do that in spreadsheets using VBA code, and then gradually moved into Python in order to look at those values and make comparisons and find duplicates. And you can do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
The human can do it, do a series of of tasks, and actions. But if you can leverage the machine speed and capabilities, you can. Just one of the many benefits, of AI, and that is let the machine do the mundane. Let the machine do the long sets of tasks across, let's say, 100,000 rows or more, and then come back and you can identify those anomalies. So anomaly identification, for instance, that's definitely a superpower there.
Another one would be like going through certain departments can only have certain applications on their computers, such as if you're in banking, mergers and acquisitions cannot work with your traders. They can't even eat lunch in the same cafeteria. That's how strict it was at one of the places I worked. Because if someone's talking about a new merger and acquisition and a trader is sitting next to them or within earshot, we have Martha Stewart all over again. Yeah. Most people know about Martha Stewart, so.
I'd have her for lunch. I'd good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, because when you trade departments, if they left the old software on your computer and you're now in the other department, you're now subject to doing insider trading.
Yep.
We even had entirely different set of technicians, and they weren't even allowed to cross over to the other department.
Or if you do like healthcare, right? So you've got healthcare, I'll say standard operations, say corporate activities, right? And then you also have HIPAA, right? You have the medical side, totally isolated type of environments, right? And it's going to be. They all have computers, but they're totally isolated. Try to inventory that. I've done it, right? That's not an easy task, right?
Yeah.
You can do that. But to your point, the software environment, some of that comparison, it's a great example, right? Okay, what's possible, what's not, what type of setup you need to have, what type of configuration needs to happen with those computers. Maybe what type of computers they have is totally different because it needs to be something restricted. And I'm used to the government. I had these back in my HP days where you put the card inside the computer. And I think it still works for the government today. I think they were starting to get away from it. But you're really starting to work through and figure out, okay, how do you, what kind of computers do these individuals need? That's kind of where I was going. Right?
That's why the life cycle begins with specification.
Yeah, seriously. And now they further refine, okay, why is that happening? Which environments? In AI, from a reporting standpoint, versus doing this in a spreadsheet, you try to figure out, calculate on your own, you can do it in seconds versus hours, right? And there's a lot of value there. Now, here's the thing that got you. We're the last few minutes here, where we 10 minutes left. Here's what got you. We're talking about AI. It's the new object, the shiny object. Everyone's playing with it. You can get for free a little bit of free stuff. You can get more in depth if you want to. And trust me, there's a little of everything to do. You can have it transcribe your discussions, like what we're doing right now, things like that. And say, okay, do some analysis and things like that. That's awesome. The reality is it costs money.
Yeah.
Always.
So here's the caveat for us. You can figure this out, right? You've done all the stuff. AI is supposed to be fixing it. But you're not allowed to use AI for your environment. What do you do?
You could make a business case and hopefully change that. But if you're restricted at that point, then or you can identify it, right? And then you can maybe petition leadership to say, well, okay, if I can't do it, right, somebody needs to do it. So please look over establishing a team to fulfill those functions. It's another one of those places where it's a good start, and I don't think it's done quite often enough. and that is to align the business objectives with the IT objectives, with the ITAM objectives. So this way, all the way across, you can kind of get an idea of what's needed, what's worth investing in order to determine the outcome. What's that value that's going to be provided back to the business?
Absolutely. And also being able to say, from a resourcing perspective, to say, we talk about the task you automate, and Rob, I think you articulate it well. That resource may or may not be technology.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, the reason why you don't have access to it is because maybe they didn't pay enough licenses for you to have access. They don't think that you provide, they don't believe that you're going to provide that value use enough in order for it to help the company move forward. So again, we can go down the tangent, but that's reality. It costs money. You look at all the it doesn't matter, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, how do you put that in place? Okay, so one thing I want to do as we get so this is cool. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Because I saw we had a question come in too.
I have a question. Okay, the first time I ever heard of company-owned AI is when you had that woman on a few weeks ago with the red hair. That you did I never heard of AI, company-owned AI, that was only within the company. That reminded me of IBM's first Watson, and Watson literally played Jeopardy, and Watson was not allowed to go outside of its own knowledge to get any answer.
Okay.
So having restrictive AI was something new to me that was only within the company.
You restrict it so it doesn't go to the internet.
You can find some really sharp folks out there that know how to build AI systems from scratch. The knowledge is out there.
Right.
So it's possible to do it. And then it's possible, of course, to restrict the access to the data only within company records.
Right.
And then follow that on with making sure that any output is, intended for a specific audience and restricted, and doesn't go outside of that.
Because you never know when the cat's going to show up and come on screen for you and just help you out.
No, I know. It's just, he's making an emphasis.
That's awesome. But to your point, yes, it can be refined and refined in certain areas or certain criteria.
Yeah,
you absolutely can do that. It's very restricted. I work with coaching programs where literally I have some of my coaches, they have 20 years of content they threw within their own library, and that's their AI, nothing from outside. And they kind of coach you on that. So that's reality. That's happening today. Like literally, I can go on my phone and go to this type of resource. It's today. It's available.
Yeah, I'm talking to somebody about that right now.
Yeah. So that is very possible and very doable. Now I did see there's a question that came in. I want to hit that real quick as we get here to the top of the hour. The last 5 minutes. Okay, let me throw that there. What part of the ITAM process would AI automations cut the most / least? Cut out the most / least, in your opinion? I think we kind of hit salt and peppered that a little bit today, actually, in some of our conversation. But I think if we're as we finish up, I'm gonna hit the other square here. What comes to mind, Rob?
Yeah. The first thing that you should think of in this particular context are what are those activities, what workflows, what processes take you the most time, are the most tedious, or are the most expensive that are being used right now within your business operations. In particular, ITAM, because that's most of the focus of our discussion, right? So inventory, for instance, purchase analysis to understand and have a complete asset management database record. And then, of course, you could just dive and go into all sorts of things from there. But do that. Do an analysis of your current process state, right? And just determine what are the most expensive, the most longest, right? Or the most complicated. And then put a dollar figure on that, right? And then take that dollar figure and align it from greatest to least, or time greatest to least, and start focusing like I did a long time ago when I was working with a ticket system and I first took on IT operations and help desk. Take our top 5 complaints, by the number of incidents, right? address those. And then once you've satisfactorily addressed those, utilizing AI or whatever, then all right, drop down. Let's tackle the next 5 that come up. And by doing that, it's like that 80-20 rule. You end up addressing the 80, right? And then you scale down the total number of those various different process pain points, I'll put it. And so do it that way.
No, that's great. Deanna, any thoughts?
One of the other things that, to add on to what Rob said, is you can actually use them to find things that shouldn't be in your environment as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of enterprise companies don't realize they're not allowed to have .edu software in their environment. They send their people out and they come back, they put it on their machine, and if they don't have a license for each one of those, they owe money. They'll have to buy the new license. Yeah.
What comes to mind for me, because we talk about the expensive part of it, but it also, I'm from Missouri, right? I literally grew up in Missouri here in the States, right? So show me state is what we call it. Is I also want AI to prove me it works. So the reason why I say that is use AI to automate what you're doing extremely well already inside the organization, right? Because if you know it works, you have a full trust in it, cool, that's awesome. Let's use AI and make sure it comes up with the same results.
Yeah.
Get back to the audit.
Yeah.
And when you do that, I kid you not, it's like, well, why would you do that? It's like, because when you validate that, sky's the limit after that, right? You may have some risk and opportunities, but leverage what you have that really, what you do a really efficiency. Maybe it's receiving, maybe it's returns, maybe it's your stockroom management, maybe you're doing disposal, right? Okay, make a transaction. See if you can do it quicker.
Yep.
Maybe instead of a couple of days of response, you have it done in minutes, right?
Process efficiency exercise.
Yeah, and that's, you have a report, it's like, here you go. Well, again, you're sort of eliminating jobs, but you're actually being more efficient. So I'll say the stockroom management, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do a barcode scanner, you do an RFID, passive, and you do a full scan, everything's in there, et cetera. You're literally, it's say maybe a 10-minute operation, if that, right? You're updating the system, AI is providing the feedback, and before you walk back out of the cage, right? Before you walk out of the cage, the 200 systems you just scanned, right? It's going to say, what happened to the system? Why is this not in here? So you can check while you're in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
It's possible to do.
That's reality, right? You're not going back to your desk and saying, okay, well, I think I have it. Let me do some analysis. It might take you a little bit. And then you get distracted, so you can't do it for 3 days and get finished the task. I think there's something to be said for that, right? Just as an example. Again, I went off the reservation, but I think that's reality too, right? As we look at that. So again, I appreciate that question. It's great. Hopefully, Jonathan, that helps a little bit on some of those ideas. Think the hard stuff, absolutely, but also keep it simple. Because what happens with complexity, complexity kills everything. Even as imagine, we know we can be quite complex, but when you bring it back to basics, there you go. Okay, I see Cindy had a comment. Put it real quick.
Yeah.
Finish up here.
That's a good one.
I totally love. So they're coming back with crazy data. Oh my gosh, it's insane. I was actually playing with it even this morning. I was doing one thing, and all of a sudden I said, okay, refine it. It went totally off the reservation. It's like, I said, what happened? What's the response to it? It kept going down this little tangent. So sometimes AI is not as smart as you think it is. They're still learning. And I'll give an example. For those that have Alexa in their homes, and I do, right? I have Alexa I set up, and they have the Alexa Plus coming out, right? But the Alexa Plus is great. You're doing more AI moving forward, all these new voices. It sounds really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff with it, et cetera. The reality is, I just told it to go back to Alexa for me yesterday. I couldn't deal with Alexa Plus. The reason being, Alexa Plus did not have the same functionality as the original Alexa.
Oh.
Well, what did they? I'm interested in knowing what was changed, but not today in this conversation.
And they wouldn't tell me the difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I reported whenever there were issues. So I mean, I've been working on this for weeks with the new part. I reverted back because I got tired of getting these BS answers. I'll be honest. I don't get too crazy with that. And I said, okay, revert back to your original Alexa because it was on the Alexa Plus. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't use Alexa Plus. I'm just using my own example. I reverted back to Alexa because I knew I was going to get better answers, more reflective, not go off the reservation back to Cindy's point, right? You know, when I reverted back, and this is how much I use Alexa and how much I was familiar with it. If you ask Alexa, how long will it take to get to a location, the original Alexa, it will actually tell you. If you're trying to go downtown or something like that. You put on Alexa Plus, ask the exact same question. It says, I don't know. My point is be aware of what you have when it talks about AI, right? Understand what you have, but don't be afraid of reverting and saying, guys, as much as this sounds great, you're not ready. So that was my final message I want to put in there. Rob, you final closure moments, Deanna, vice versa, wherever you guys, whoever wants to.
I had the exact same example I was working on yesterday. I can't remember exactly what it was, but a good best practice, right, that I follow is I try to copy my original prompt, right? And the reason why is because you never know during the process of doing prompt engineering, it's going to start to deviate, right? Because I knew the subject matter, I could do my own quality assurance on the spot. I see it, it's a deviation. That's not true. Go back and start over. Sometimes it can also not remember like what the previous prompts were. So if you put that clean prompt in and then modify that to eliminate that error, then that's going to help a little bit. But if you don't know what it is, right, then you might want to get the assistance of somebody that you know that does, especially in business critical decision making, you know, and those sorts of matters. Anything that's going to impact like life, safety, you know, infrastructure, those kinds of things. So they'll understand that if it's your job and you're responsible for it, you might consider not using AI to determine or to give you the final answer. And you might use AI to consult on pieces of it and then do your own due diligence in order to be able to hand something off to somebody, right? But I'm sure there must be material out there around using AI for those things that aren't necessarily like the best case because of life, property, et cetera, safety.
Absolutely. Great point. Deanna, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd rather a human save me than AI at this point in time.
Not quite that trustworthy.
We're working on it, but there is a human factor that does help that additional confidence. Yeah. And with that, we'll call today a wrap.
Yeah.
This has been great. We've had some great conversation with AI. We've talked about from several different perspectives. Hopefully you really appreciate it. If you do, put in the comments down below. Really appreciate it. I've been receiving some great feedback from everyone. Keep it coming. Because we've got some things planned for the rest of this week. We're not forgetting. And then next month, we're about to we'll disclose that later in the week. We're going to have a lot of fun. You think we've had fun so far? Oh, not even close to where we're going. We're going to have a lot more fun coming as well. Mm-hmm. So the fun aspect is only going to grow and continue. It's unlike anything you're going to see in the industry, period. But make sure you also sign up on the YouTube channel. It's at ITAM Kitchen over there on YouTube. Make sure, because I need those likes. It helps on several fronts to actually for the LinkedIn as well. Or not just LinkedIn. LinkedIn. I don't know what LinkedIn is doing for YouTube. I'm trying to make sure with the right technology. But thanks again for everybody. A little bit over, definitely quite a bit over today. But it was a great conversation. Appreciate it. And let's wrap for today. Have a good one.
Thanks so much, folks.
So long.
Mm-hmm.